Well, hello and welcome. We are so excited to greet you here today. This has been a topic that is a long time coming and a lot of energy. I know that we have a lot of educators who have either made the switch, thinking about the switch, those who are in learning who are thinking, that might be an interesting gig. So I'm excited to welcome our WITA extraordinaire, Laura. Welcome back into the awesome. Woohoo! And she brought along the wonderful Niki to talk to us, yay, about K-12 to corporate. Is there a culture shock? I love it. So hello, everybody. Everyone, you know how this works. So keep that chat active. I will be watching over the Q&A, and I will let these wonderful women take it away.
Yay. Hello, welcome. K-12 to corporate, the culture shock. Let's see what we have here. All right, Laura, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Laura Coulter. I was in education for 24 years, and the last March I moved out of a technology and learning coach role into instructional design corporate and work remotely, developing courses, and I love it. And there were there's some interesting things along the way that we learned that we're here to share with you.
And I am Niki Porter, and I have been in education for 15 years and also a former technology and learning coach, and joined this career in March of this year as an instructional designer. So I'm really excited to get to present in my new role. So ready to hit the road running. All right. So for our first slide here, we have a little bit of an activity for you guys. All right, so I want you to think first. We're not acting just quite yet. And our slide title is Pedagogy versus Androgyny. No.
Andragogy.
Andragogy, there you go. I did it. I told myself not to. That word, I tell you. All right, so if something with andragogy, I'm determined, andragogy. All right, if something came up that was a great opportunity, what would be your reason not to participate? Okay, I'm going to say that again. If something came up that was a great opportunity, what would be your reason not to participate? And I want you to think personally and professionally. So you can answer both of those. All right. Then I want you to type in the chat, but don't post it just yet. Okay, so start typing. If something were to come up that was a great opportunity, what would your reason be not to participate?
Give you about a minute or so. You guys have the reactions at the bottom. If you would just throw up a reaction if you need more time. All right.
All right, and post.
Oh, look at all these coming in. Look at that.
All right, so let's see. Let's look at all of us. We're going to look at these together. And as you read some of the responses, I want you to think to yourself about what are some of the commonalities in this? What do you see come up repetitively? Fear of the unknown. It's not the right time. Ooh, what if you don't succeed? I see fear a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Self-doubt, timing, other commitments. So, okay, thinking personal. It involves too much public speaking. Impact to personal, family, depending on what it is. Fear of failure. Okay, this will relate to our next slide.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, keep that in mind.
All right, so we're talking about adult learning principles. In that andragogy is the teaching of adults, pedagogy is the teaching of the younger grades. And so we want to talk a little bit about how that's different. There is so much that can apply from, your teaching experiences in a K-12 environment. Some of it does apply, but then there's some things that are different. Your learners are very different and they're in a different place. And that's you guys. You would be a learner, and if something came up for you, you have to take in all these things into consideration before you accept it. So there are anywhere from 5 to 8 adult learning principles. Malcolm Knowles came up with 5, and then it's been added on over time. So the first one is the adults must want to learn. This is internal motivation. If they don't want to do it and don't want to be there, then it's really hard to get them in there, to get the learning in there. Adults will learn only what they need to learn. And this one is kind of related to the next one, whereas it's focused on problem solving. And also, so this one's also known as relevance. If it's relevant to them, if they feel they need it, they will seek it out, or they will be open to learning it. But also adult learning focuses on problem solving. And if you can help them solve a problem they currently have, they're all in on that. There's the internal motivation. There's the relevancy. It's all tied together. Now, adults also learn by doing. They're not going to learn as well, sit and get. They need to try it. You need to help them do some experiential learning so that they can really understand and internalize what they need to do and feel like they're gaining something from it. Now, experience affects the adults' learning. And this is, your adults, okay, your K-12, their experiences are all of a certain age. They're not all similar, but they're children who don't have all these decisions to make. They haven't had jobs. So when you're talking to them about things they might have experienced to try to connect things to them, you're limited to visiting a relative or playing with friends. With adults, there's such a wide experience of that they've had that comes to them, and it colors what they're learning. So you always need to keep that into, you can't account for everything when adults, you can't account for every possible adult experience you have that's out there, but you do need to account for the fact that people have different experiences. Okay, and adults learn best in an informal situation. This actually works really well when you're talking about community. If they can work with others, have conversations, be informal about the learning, they're going to enjoy that more and get into it more. So this is another interesting principle that can kind of help you design good learning for adults. And then the last one, number 7, is adults want guidance and consideration as equal partners in the process. And in that case, they want to be able to have some say in what they're learning. You could do options of, here's some choices, you choose, and then they say, okay, I think this one will work best for me. And essentially you're partners in their learning because you're offering them some things you believe would work for them, and they get to decide between them. So they get much more invested into it if they feel like they're not just somebody sitting there and getting, they are actually actively involved in this learning process. So at the end of this session, we've got a resource for you. And in that resource, I've linked a video that goes a little further into the adult learning principles, but it also gives some examples of each one and how it might relate. So if you want any further on that, then there is information in the resource document. All right, Niki.
All right. So I have a little bit of a comparison with our method of teaching children and method of teaching adults. So our children are more dependent on the teacher, and our adults would prefer to have some independence, right? And then, as Laura already mentioned, that our students are coming in with less experience, and the adults have a lot more experiences to pull from, right, when they're learning. There is some more external motivation with the students. So they're looking for, or they have a need for some external motivation to push forward. And our adults have somewhat already learned to pull that internal motivation from within. They've had the external motivation there, but they've already found reasons to have that internal motivation as well. Not to say that they don't enjoy external motivation, because we all could benefit from that as well. But it's much easier for us to find that internal motivation within as well. With teaching students, we have standards-based instruction, so that's already laid out. And with adults, there needs to be some relevance, some problem solving. Kind of with our opening activity, relevance, things that matter, things that have importance are going to be somewhat of a driving force in your decision making. That things that push you forward and wanting to move forward and do something, take an opportunity that you haven't taken before, and then also to solve a problem. With problem solving, you want to solve that problem. You don't want to not get something, right? As an adult, we want to win. We want to accomplish things. So that alone, there's that internal motivation there as well. So that is with our adult learning. So there's a difference between our adults and our students. In our next slide, we're going to talk about some joys working with adults. One thing that I found right away with working with adults is I didn't have to work as hard as getting this reaction. So with our students, with working with students, you're pulling out all the bells and whistles, and sometimes you feel like you're a performer, right? You've got to pull out all the tricks to get them to, oh, that was fun, right? But with an adult, once that you've shown them that a strategy or a skill or something is relevant or makes their job easier or helps them, this is the best, and you get that reaction. And it's so rewarding. And it doesn't take as much. They're so much more appreciative. They appreciate much faster than our young students. So that is definitely a joy with working with adults.
Another joy is in this case, and I've already touched on it here, that adults have a broader experiences for you to draw from when you're doing examples. So adults have things like cooking. Your kids probably can't boil water when you're talking to them, but adults have things in their background like cooking, doing laundry, travel, having a job, just very broad topics that your adults can use to connect to your students, your adult learners, and connect them to each other, which makes everything very relevant to them. And then it's just a lot of fun to make connections to adults' situations and to adults' experiences. I've had firefighters as students, and I got to pull examples out from them that everybody learned something from, and you get to use their broader, you have a bigger pot to draw from, that's for sure, with adults. So that's what makes it a joy. And definitely, Alex said context is key with adults, the why, and it really is, it makes a difference. Why on earth do they need this? And connecting it is key. Connecting it to them in some way is key. We're doing fantastic on time, just so you know.
No, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it out loud. All right. Yes. And that goes right into our next topic, Laura, with team versus autonomy and building relationships. Because us being adults and working with adults and having something already that we have in common with them, that we can have topics that we can talk about, that we can relate with, and we have those whys that we have in common. So how do you build relationships with your subject matter experts, right? So we have great opportunities, Laura and I, in having conversations with the LinkedIn community, and we posted a few questions and calls for help to get other people's stories, so that today wouldn't just be about ourselves and our experiences. Because although we have a great story to tell, we know that it's not everyone's story. So we listened to others, and there were a few responses that we thought that we wanted to share with you all. So we asked, how do you build relationships with subject matter experts? And these were some of the responses. We heard that ask questions, okay? Going in as the ID, the instructional designer, or the new person on the block coming in from education, working with the SME, ask questions, be willing to learn, okay? If they're the expert, ask questions, be willing to listen. Be confident. Although you're new here, be confident and listen and ask questions, but also present yourself as confident. Also, and we spoke to, we had an interview with another young lady, and she mentioned that although you're listening and you don't want to be the know-it-all and bringing in all this ID language and these adult methods to the conversation and theories, it's okay to say no. It's okay to disagree and to say that in conversation if someone says something that you disagree with how to present a topic or how to teach something. And I actually had two conversations where that came up, where sometimes you do have to put your foot down and say no on occasion, that's okay. We also heard that you have to be willing to learn. Okay, and be open to that, and make sure that everyone knows that you're willing to learn, and be open to feedback. In some places, you don't get feedback often. Everyone's busy and you don't get that time. And so when you get feedback, consider it as a gift. This is something that you may not always get. So even if the feedback is something that you're not going to, because not all feedback is fantastic feedback, be open to the feedback and collect it, right? You don't want to ever push the feedback away and risk not getting it, okay? So be open to the feedback, collect it all, and then sort through it, right? Because you don't ever want to give off the impression that you don't want the feedback, all right? There are some folks who are in this profession that don't have that opportunity to get a lot of feedback. So definitely be open to all feedback. All right.
So some of what worked well in K-12 can hurt in corporate. And in one of my conversations with somebody who does hiring, likes to bring in teachers, but really wishes that they knew a few things. This came up. So one is that don't go in as Niki mentioned, the know-it-all, the expert. You need to be open and be ready to partner. Remember that in adult learning, they want to be equal partners. But when you're working with your SMEs, you're partnering together in there. You don't want to show up as if you have all the answers, because that immediately shuts down a relationship. And the relationships are everything. The other thing and I know it worked well in K-12, because you were the authority in your classroom. You were the final word. And that's heady stuff. It really is. It's easy to get used to. It's a little hard to let it go. Yes. It really is. So also the thing you need to get used to, and that worked in K-12 but doesn't work in corporate, is working alone. Again, in a classroom, when you close that door, that is your domain, and nobody needs to come in and tell you how to do your business. And we have that feeling because that's what we had to do all the time. We were so responsible for everything that we just took it all on. And so when you move into corporate, that shifts. You can't consider yourself working alone. You are part of a team, and you need to work on collaboration and see how that really let go of the ability to take everything on yourself. You don't have to, and really it's better if you don't. If you work with other people, you'll be more approachable to work with other people and more people. Okay, did I cover it all?
Yes. All right. What's it all about? All right, so we're going to go into coaching, performance consulting, and valuing. All right, I'll start with coaching. Coaching is one of my favorite things to do. And one, I believe, is going into it with a strong relationship building type background. And I love to work on that aspect, is building that relationship with the one that I'm working with. And so with coaching, it's important to build a safety net. So when you're working with that subject matter expert, or depending on where you're working, or if you're working with your team member, make sure that you're in a safe space. Use norms to help the person that you're coaching build capacity. So you want them to move forward. You don't want to have them stopping and not able to produce and move. Use active listening so that they can move forward, and also use probing questions. So if you're constantly interrupting and giving suggestions and not asking probing questions, you might stop the workflow. So one thing that you can do is use probing questions, like, are there other strategies you could use to, and this is even if you want to give suggestions, changing your suggestions into questions so that the person that you're coaching comes up with that what you would suggest on their own. What might the next step be? Okay. And then, so what you're thinking is, and restate what you've heard, paraphrase some of the things that you've heard them saying in the conversation. Okay. Be careful and watch your body language in some of the statements that you're saying. Make sure that your tone is not negative, and that when you ask questions, that you're not questioning with a negative tone, because that equals danger zone. It makes the person that you're speaking with think that they're going in the wrong direction, which is going to change their responses, because now they think that what they're saying is wrong, and they're going to try to change their thinking, because they feel like they're going in the wrong direction and they want to please you. So be careful when you're coaching. Watch your body language, your tone, and negative questioning, and ask probing questions in a positive way to get them to where they are moving forward. And so those are just a few starter questions. And then there's a resource, and the resource that we will give you towards the end of this session, that has a few more probing questions that you can use as you're coaching others to get them to move forward, that allow you to give suggestions in a coaching way.
All right. So a little bit of instructional design is also performance consulting. You're there in corporate to analyze gaps. You're there to find out what the needs are and close those needs, close those gaps. So you have to do research. You have to analyze what's going on. and you're helping the business optimize their performance. That's what performance consultants do that. They're helping businesses optimize their performance. Instructional designers essentially do some of that. The basic process is to identify a need, figure out the cause, and propose a solution. Well, as an instructional designer, you're called in, I want a course on something, such and such. Well, you go in with questions. Let's look at the need. Let's do some research. What's causing this? And is training a solution? Training is usually only one of the solutions or one of the possible options. It's not always training, but a bit of this job is performance consulting. Along with coaching, you have the performance consulting, and you also have valuing. So a valuing is a way to help you build relationships with your subject matter experts or anybody you work with, actually. You want people to feel valued in your presence, and you want to be able to let them know that what they say is valuable, and what they think is worth listening to. So, coaching kind of asks questions and pulls things out of them, and kind of guides them in a particular direction. And valuing does something similar, but there's a process to it. So what you're doing is you're asking them a question. How is such and such going? And then they give them the answer. Give them time to answer. And then ask the next question. What will happen if things keep going the way they're going? You're not saying, "Ooh, I can see this happening," and this really works well with friends as well. Just saying. I've used it on my daughter. Works great. So what will happen? And then they come back with a response. Then the next question is, well, is that what you want? And they come back with a response. And how would you like it to be? And they're thinking about it. And that one really stumped. And I'm just using my daughter as an example here. Is that what you want? And how would you like it to be? Was game changer questions for her. And I was not putting forth any of my advice or thoughts. I was letting it all come from the other side, showing that I valued that person. So the last three questions: what can you do to accomplish that? What obstacles will you encounter? What's your final plan? Again, you're just pulling it out of them and guiding them with a process. And sometimes you go through a set of questions multiple times in a little cycle. So for example, is that what you want? Could have two answers. Or what would you like it to be? Could have two answers. And those two answers will have different 5, 6, 7 questions. So you'll have to cycle through for one of the answers and then cycle through for another. But giving yourself that framework and really letting the other person take the lead in the thoughts and builds that trust between you that allows them to open up and allows them to trust that you've got their best interests in heart, and they will listen to you more when you have that kind of a relationship.
Yeah. So, Laura, I really feel like that whole process, as you went through it slowly, I'm thinking that would help me reflect. And when you're all frazzled and all the thoughts are coming really fast, that would really help me reflect in times that you need to,
If you don't have a friend asking you those questions, then you just pull out the question list and you ask yourself.
Seriously. There you go. All right.
So now it's time for an activity. And this is where you guys are going to do something. We're going to be going into breakout rooms at the tables in a few minutes. Don't worry, we're going to give you all that you need before you go. But the way it's going to work is you're going to sit 4 to a table and partner up. And then you're going to do some role playing. One of you is going to take the role of an instructional designer, and the other one is going to take the role of a subject matter expert. And your situation is this: they want a course for customer service, to improve customer service at a call center. Okay, so that if you would like to take a quick screenshot of this, this will be up for a few minutes more while I'm still explaining. So I recommend you grab the screenshot. So the situation is that it's a customer service for a call center. Now there's 4 to a table, so there's 2 sets of partners. And the first pair is going to role play while the second pair watches and learns and kind of reflects. And the first situation is that the subject matter expert is resistant to changing what has always been done. Okay, so that's how the conversation is going to go. And the instructional designer, whoever's playing that, is going to practice how they would address this situation. When you're going to have, I'm thinking maybe 3 or 4 minutes per partner, maybe 5 minutes per pair to have this conversation. And then you're going to swap, and the other pair is going to take on a role of an ID and a SME. And the situation in this time is that this SME wants every bell and whistle ever made in a training. So how are you going to handle that? And then, so each set of pairs is going to have, each pair is going to have about 5 minutes to do their talk, to do their role play. And then you'll maybe have 2 minutes or so in your group to discuss if you'd like. And then you're going to come back in here prepared to share. Prepared to share an insight or struggle in a chat when we return. Heather, yes, you can listen in if you can't participate. So whatever, if you guys see Heather House at a table, that table can have 5. Because she's not going to be, they're going to need 5 at that table, 4 plus Heather. Okay, and Carrie, hopefully we'll see you in just a little bit. Okay, so
we want to model this, right?
Yeah, we're not going to send you off until we model what we kind of want this to look like. So on our next slide, we're going to do a fishbowl activity. Raise your hand if you know what a fishbowl is. Well, you don't have to raise it on there, but or do a reaction. I see a couple. Okay.
Oh, got some raised hands.
Go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll explain. So a fishbowl is where it's like, a fishbowl, you can stand around it and see everything going on inside the fishbowl. Well, Niki and I are going to take on the role of an instructional designer and a subject matter expert, and we've got a situation that we're going to role play. And in this case, it's about training software. And I am going to ask Niki some questions, and she's going to be my SME, and we're going to go back and forth a little bit so that you can see what this looks like and might sound like. So you guys ready? Let me pull up my notes. Okay, here we go. I am the instructional designer. Hi, Niki. Thanks for meeting with me. I'm so excited to work with you on this training project.
Yeah, hi. I'm not really sure why we're meeting.
Oh, well, you have a training session coming up, and Derek, your manager, requested that I work together with you as on the instructional design part.
I'm sorry that he pulled you into this. I already know that what I'm going to be doing for this training.
Oh, that's great. I'd love to hear it.
I guess. I'm going to walk them through how to do each piece, and they have to answer a quiz question for every section. And then there's going to be a longer quiz at the end to see what they've learned.
I love the idea of breaking up the content with an interaction. Can you help me to understand what that walkthrough will look like and what your learners will be able to do after it?
Well, I'm going to pull up the software on my shared screen and talk them through all the steps and how to do something, like check inventory.
Okay. So as I understand, I think you're going to show them the process for checking the inventory. What will the learners be doing?
They'll watch the walkthrough and ask questions at the end.
At any point, will they be in the software checking inventory themselves to see if they can do what you showed them?
hadn't planned on that. I was just going to give them a quiz question or two on what I showed them.
Do you feel they should be able to walk away from your session and be comfortable doing all the things you showed them?
I don't know. Maybe. There's a lot to cover, and we really don't have time for them to stop and try a lot of stuff.
Derek says you are the topmost expert in this company using the software. Can you tell me a little bit about how you learned this software so well?
Oh, well, that took a lot of trial and error. And I figured out how to do everything pretty much all on my own. I referenced the documentation when I needed help, but I did it on my own.
That's pretty cool that you could dig into the software and learn it just by doing. Did anyone try to show you how to use it?
Oh, geez, it was such a long time ago. Let me think. Yeah, I think there was a training course, and someone, I can't remember his name, demonstrated how to use the software. I didn't really learn from it, though, because I really need to learn things hands-on.
Yeah, me too. Do you think you'll have any learners that need to learn hands-on too?
Probably. Do you think we can schedule another meeting after this? Because I'm beginning to think that my training might need some revamping. I don't really think I have all the options, and I'm hoping that maybe you can help with that.
I'd love to. Let's use the rest of this meeting to get a handle on things, and then we'll schedule what we need to do. I'm so excited. All right, that's the end of our fishbowl. We modeled, and I know it's not fair because we had a script. You guys will be unscripted, but I hope that you got the idea. So first, before we break up into our rooms, I want to make sure everybody understands. Nikki, could you go back to the previous slide in case they missed the question?
Yes.
Could you please put in chat, if you're comfortable with the instructions, please put a 1. If you'd like me to go over it again, put a 0.
Oh, got a lot of 1s here. Well, so far. Okay. All right, Shauna
would really like to listen in. If there's a table of 4, you can go in and just sit and let them know that you're there listening. I'd really love you to try to participate because there's no wrong here. And putting yourself in the situation where you're actually trying it actually builds some confidence, even if you mess it up, because you will have already tried it. And this is a very safe situation. Yeah. So I'm hoping that we get a lot more people willing to try it versus just watching. But okay, so I saw some 1s. I didn't see a whole lot, but I didn't see any 0s other than the people who want to just sit. So, okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pause this session. It's going to bump you out, or you go out to a breakout room, to a table.
Table talk.
Table talk. Yeah. Choose the tab at the top that says tables. And you're going in there, 4 to a table. Choose which situation you're doing with your partner. You do not have to know anybody. Just sit down and be ready to play. Take about 5 minutes each pair. And then meet back here at, so that was 12 minutes total. Let's meet back here at 7 after. Is it 7? No, 3 after the hour. Is that right? Did I do my math right?
That's 7 minutes. 3 after the hour.
3 after the hour. Oh, wait. So 6 plus 7 is 13. Yeah.
So
that's 7 after the hour. 7 after the hour.
Okay. And Heather, if you could just hold back as you watch the tables fill so that you can be that 5th person, and then hop on when you see a full table. Okay. That way you have the control. Perfect. All right. And then they won't have to look for your name. Perfect. All right. So again, when you come back out, find the table talks, go in and fill a table, and you can begin. You have your screenshots.
And it'll be 8 minutes after the hour at this point. That's when we should be back in this room.
All right.
All right, here we go. Hi, I got carried away.
We were just saying, this is so your space.
Oh,
No.
people are still hopping back in. Cool.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're at the point where we're going to reflect on this. And I know that this was a little scary for a lot of people, and some people were just a little afraid to engage, but some did and some watched. So I would like to see some reflections typed in the chat. Just some insight or struggle in what you might have learned doing this role play. And we'll give about 30 seconds of silence for that, for y'all to type something.
I think 4 more people trickled in after you said that. So we are typing in the chat a few things, a reflection of what took place when you were at your tables.
Yep, an insider struggle.
Yes. I had a grand time, by the way.
Did you? I enjoyed it too. I was like, ooh, I had my camera off, thank goodness, because my face was like, ask this question, ask that question. But they did great. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up. I see Chris has written the 2 worlds can be very different. Which 2 worlds are you referring to there? Are you talking about the SME and ID world or the corporate and the teaching world? Can you explain that for us, Chris?
Yes.
School and corporate, yeah, definitely can be different. One of the things that came out of our conversation was how fast they want things. So you've got to be prepared to move fast and really focus in on things. What did anything from you, Nikki?
I just want to compliment. Oh my goodness. Let me see if I remember. Well, I can't remember names. There was so much to take in. But there was a question that my instructional designer asked. She was doing situation 1. Resistant on changing what's always been done. And this question, I think, was the turning point in their conversation. And she says, well, in the initial training, how do you know they're ready to take calls? And and I think that
question.
Yes, it was a good question. And I think that because she kept saying that they were doing the same thing and they just do the training. But then she says, but when they get on the floor, that's when the real training happens, because they're actually taking in calls. So it was like they do this training, but then they're going to do training all over again. So that was like a ding, ding, ding. Something's not right with the training. I identified the problem. So when she said that, like, well, what could you do? How do you know they're ready to take the calls? So that was the turning point right there. So that was good.
Chris and Manisha had a conversation, and Manisha wanted to take on the role of the unreasonable SME, so that was fun. But it was her Paul was that we want everything, and we want it in 4 weeks. And so I paused. I was like mouth open, but you couldn't see me with the camera, and Chris was trying to figure out how to get it out of her about what's the focus and what's more important. And I'm like, ask this question, and he asks the right question. He's like, okay, what training have y'all done in the past that and what was successful and what worked? And so he's trying to cut the workload and figure out where we really need to focus. And I thought that was really terrific. And bravo for jumping in, and those of you who've never done this before, this is not an easy exercise, but the first time you do it is the hardest. So congratulations, you're done with the hardest one.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes.
And
Our new two friends jumped in at the second portion and decided to go ahead and try it as well. And kudos to them as well that they were able to try it with encouragement from our veterans. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so now where are we moving on?
Yes.
All right.
Right. And we go right into joys. Love it.
Okay, joys. Okay. Woo, this one looks like mine. Yes. Okay. So one of the joys of this, what section are we on? Are we on?
We're right before how to grow. So we're doing great.
Oh, we're really there already? Holy mackerel. No, we're still in team versus autonomy.
Ooh, okay. So we got to pick it up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we do. So, in team versus autonomy, the really cool thing, a really good joy is just flat out working with adults. If you've been in K-12 and there can be days when you don't have a conversation with another adult. Oh, it's excruciating. I mean, you're really happy when you pass someone on the way to the bathroom and you stop and chat for a second. Well, in corporate, you get the joy of working with adults all day long. So that was my joy. Let's move on because we got to hustle.
Yes. And then there's collaboration with adults. So working with adults, you have that opportunity where you get to work with each other, like working with Laura. When one of us shines, we all shine. I've had the pleasure to work with Laura, and it's been a treat. And going with the previous slide, I'll never forget with working with you, the first time we chatted to each other, and it was, you want to visit? We're like, yeah, we jumped into the Zoom. It was like, and we didn't have to worry about, like the kids in the room, or waiting for a duty or anything like that. It was really nice.
Yeah, very nice. And I guess we may not have mentioned, but Nikki and I both came from the same school district, and we both work at the same company now. So we're colleagues here together, and we just brought it all over with us, and we're trying to figure it out together and what this new reality is.
Yes.
Okay, so this last thing is that in one of my conversations with, Nikki mentioned we had lots of conversations with people in preparation for this workshop. Well, in corporate, you have the ability to feel valued. And, in teaching, it's expected, and you just need to do it, and you put in more, and you put in more, and you put in more, and that's just all expected. You don't really feel valued all the time. But in corporate, if you get the chance to show what you can do and your skills, and people see that and value that in you, that's just huge. And that opportunity is there. Okay, so let's continue on.
All right, simple versus thorough.
All right, this one's me again. Okay, so we're another conversation I had with that hiring manager who hires and teachers is that they want teachers to be able to speak the language, the instructional design language and the corporate language, not the academic students and standards-based and pre-test and post-test kind of stuff. So what I've linked here is a Teacher to Instructional Design Glossary by Sarah Stevick. If you do not know Sarah Stevick, you should. She runs and I put the link in the resource document. She runs a Teaching a Path to L&D community, and it's a free community and they have webinars, they hold office hours, they mentor. So if you're not there, if you're trying to transition, Sarah is an excellent resource. I would not, Ali says Sarah is amazing. I would not have gotten the job as fast as I did if I had not had Sarah coach me through a few things. Okay, so that is coming, the Teacher to ID Glossary. We're not going to be able to do the translation activity that I had planned, but I do want you on your own to click on that glossary, which is in the resources, and try to translate a couple of statements back and forth between teaching and business, and get somebody to look at it to make sure you're saying what you think you're saying. Okay?
Yes. And we weren't sure, Laura, about our audience today. And I will tell you that our audience today will benefit from this activity, just so you know. So, yes, we have a lot of teachers in the room. All right. So your role. So as an instructional designer, you won't have all the control that we talked about earlier. Yeah, you won't have that. And this will not be all of your ideas. Okay, so just remember, you're the instructional designer. You don't want to over-engineer. Think about what you're creating and what you're bringing as a prototype, and don't make it too complex. What we found is as you create and you bring to the table with all the SMEs and others that are involved, that they may pick it apart and change it, or give enough feedback to where it becomes a different product. And you have to be okay with that, because that's your role, right? And so it will be tweaked and it will change. And so you don't want to get too attached to it. Don't use ID lingo. I think we touched on that a little bit before. ID lingo, all of that is for our learning. Remember, some of the people that we're working with don't have your background. It may be something that you use in a situation where you have to say no, and you have to stand your ground when you think that it's compromising the learning process, and you're asked why. But that's not something that you want to lead with. Okay. And then you want to be flexible. Business direction changes. A half-done project can become invalid, and be prepared to let go. You invest a lot of time into things, into your products that you create, but you don't want to take anything personal. Okay, because your products will change, and you may create something or work really hard on something, and then as the business changes, it may have to all be revamped and recreated or redone.
Liz, are you available to answer a question? I have a question for you. I'm summoning Liz. There she comes.
You are always successful in finding Liz. How many help?
The live number that we see at the bottom, which is 51 minutes, 52 minutes, does that include the breakout room time, or do I need to add that on there?
So that is, the pause is really a pause. So it doesn't include the time that we were at the tables.
Okay. So we're looking at about 12, 15 minutes left.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We're gonna have to speed through. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing awesome.
So don't take anything personal. This is going to be a very quick story, personal story. And I was new on the job. Niki had just gotten there. We were still getting our feet wet, and we were tasked with creating a deliverable. And it was a paper or an electronic document that was going to be made into a job aid. Well, I took complete ownership of it. I said, oh yeah, I can do this. I did the whole teacher thing. I've got it. No worries. And so I created something with all the steps, and I put it in a nice design like I thought it would. And they took it and just ripped it into a bazillion little pieces. The content was fine, but the design was all moved around and changed, and I took it personally, and I got really upset. And that was my first learning experience about not taking it personally, not having the ownership, and working with my team. My strength wasn't the graphic design. That was their strength. I needed to let that go. But I promise you, I was hot. And Niki was there and saw me. So that was a huge learning experience for me, and it just broke that barrier for me. So now I'm not taking it any of it personal. I am not taking 100% ownership. If you have feedback for me, bring it on. Let's fix it and make it together, make it better together, because it did turn out better. I mean, as soon as they got their hands on it and worked on it. It turned out better, and I just needed to let that go. But I had to breathe fire a little bit before.
And kudos to you, Laura, because you immediately, when you saw it, you were like, oh, it's nice.
I did let it go. It took me a minute.
Yours was perfectly formatted, but you were like, oh, it's nice. All right, that brings us to our joy. Okay, while ownership and releasing ownership can be something that's difficult, it's also nice to release the ownership can be a joy. You get the ownership, everybody gets the ownership, right? So, and think about that, Laura. What about if you just, put it together and pass it on to the next person and just release and can move on to the next task and not even have to think about it again. Like that can be a joy, right?
Yes,
where in our previous roles, it's like you're thinking about it, you go home, you're thinking about it the next day, and it just consumes you. So let's look at releasing that ownership and responsibility as a joy.
All right, and along the same lines, not my circus, not my monkeys. We're used to doing everything. We're used to fixing everything. We're the end all, the buck stops here. I can handle that. I can handle this. I can handle that. No problem. And when there's a time when somebody else has that, then if they can take a piece off of you, it's gone. And it goes with that release of ownership, but it's also sharing the load. They have things to worry about. You don't need to fix everything. You don't. That's not your role anymore. You're not the fixer, the teacher, the end all be all. And that's very, very freeing when you know that there are others on the team who can take care of that part and you don't have to worry about it. And it's just, I mean, Nikki and I laugh because we're not in the classroom. It's just so much easier to be where we are, and it's so we feel more valued, and we can put so much more into it, and there's teams. And all right, let's keep going.
Yeah. All right. So we do have about 10 minutes and we're moving on to how to grow. So moving forward and growing, Laura.
All right. So this is going to be, move on to the next slide. I'm going to zoom through this, guys. Some of this is in the resource. The how to grow is the biggest part of the resource, but not everything is in there. But here, this is based on my personal experience and Nikki's also. The only thing I haven't done here is the local ATD. But if you want something local, ATD has local chapters. That's the Association for Talent Development. LinkedIn is my #1 place on growing the network. And there's ways to do that. And if you guys want to connect with me and visit and we can talk about how you might do that, I'll be happy to do that. Our Connect stuff is in the resources thing too. Your local meetups might also have anything in training that could help you. Slack groups have been useful, and Facebook groups. Lots and lots of ways to network with people and talk to people and ask questions and answer them. Okay, continue. Communities are huge. Oh, Jennifer's an ATT cheerleader, guys. If you have questions. Okay, L&D Cares is a community. These communities offer so many opportunities for you to stretch and really grow. GLDC is another one, and I've linked these in the resource document, and I've spelled them out, most of them. So Global Learning and Development Community, that is a social networking group for learning and development community, and it's global, and we meet every Friday and we have fun and we play a game and we meet new people, and just I love it. TLPD I mentioned earlier. This is Sarah Stevick's Teaching a Path to L&D. She has a website, there's recorded webinars, there's mentors, there's a LinkedIn channel, lots of places for you to get to know people and ask questions. The last one on there is a paid resource. The others are free. That is the Training, Learning, and Development Community. I have linked it also. This is something that I am considering paying for and joining because they put out some great stuff. And it's a very, it seems very valuable. Next. All right. Now, volunteering is another way to grow. And in one of my conversations with people to prepare for this, she puts her volunteering stuff on her resume because she's volunteering in the L&D space. And that is showing that she is staying invested in this community and in this industry, even though she may not have a job in it. Okay. So conferences are a great way to grow. Connect with people that you meet at conferences, but not only that, volunteer to help put on a conference, to host, to do back end, to do whatever. This is my second conference that this is volunteer on, and I learn something every single time. There's things like volunteermatch.org. There are volunteer opportunities for instructional designers, Design for Humanity, Designers for Learning, 24/7 Learn, and also, TLDC is amazing, good. And also, when you have a network, ask your network. I'm looking for volunteer ways to grow. What have you got for me? And your network will come back. They'll overwhelm you. If your network is big enough, they will overwhelm you. Next, am I going fast enough? Okay, mentor. So it's hard to ask for a mentor. It is. But if you can just move over that. Now, it's easier to find yourself a mentor if you have a larger network or if you belong to several communities, because there are people willing to mentor if you ask. And what you could do is you could say, okay, I'd like to one of these 5 people to be my mentor, and then ask them one at a time. And if they say no, don't take it personally. They're probably really busy, or they don't feel like they can offer you something, or they feel it would be a better fit elsewhere. But either way, ask the next person. And ask the next person. Just come up with your ask and just use it until you find yourself a mentor. And mentors can be for a short period of time. They can be for long periods of time. So you can specify that in the ask if you'd like. And it might make it more palatable if it's, these are the things I need from you. So a mentor is a great way to help you grow. And it's one of the things that the hiring person from one of my conversations said she really wishes that teachers who are moving in would have a mentor, would do some volunteering, and would maybe get a certification, which Nikki's going to talk about in just a minute. Next. Okay, last bit here is learning resources, and some of these are also linked. I use LinkedIn Learning a lot. If you have, if your library offers LinkedIn Learning for free, LinkedIn Learning for Libraries, or Linda for Libraries, I believe it's what it's called, take advantage of it. It is really great. Udemy, John Hinchcliffe has 2 courses on instructional design there, and I've linked them both in the resources. Devlin Peck's website and YouTube channel has been invaluable to me, and I always share that out with people when I'm doing it. Coursera and edX have MicroMasters in Instructional Design, but they both have the option to audit the class, and you don't have to pay anything. You just don't get to participate in the assignments. So I've linked those as well. Continue. Okay.
All right. So how to grow? Master's certification? Nah. All right. So we actually feel that everyone's path can be different, and there is no right or wrong way. I know that my story is extremely rare, and Laura's is different as well. I will say that I attribute my story to mentorship, and Laura has been a great mentor for me. But it's definitely not ideal. So we've heard from someone who says that they actually look for people who have some sort of certification or education in instructional design. We have heard that. But we also know that there are people who leave education and do research and get experiences by participating in communities and things like that, and land great jobs and do great work. watching Laura and all of her success, I've learned a ton. And so I can see it both ways. There is a resource that's going to be on that resource page, and an e-learning heroes challenge that our very own Laura Coulter created.
Did you remember to put that one on the resource?
Not positive.
I don't think I did. I don't think I remembered to put it on there, so I'm going to paste it in the chat right now.
I was just about to do it. I actually have it right on my copy. So here it is. And so there you go. You got it twice. And so you can participate in that. And that is a simulation that will take you through possibly going on different paths in what your journey may be. There are many different paths to take, and not sure which one will work. Well, you got to do what works best for you. So I listed some ones that I've heard of: the Idle Courses Academy, Western Governors University. I received my master's in educational leadership from there, but they also have an instructional design master's degree there. And then just the community and e-learning heroes, I think, is awesome with Articulate, and just getting some hands-on experience there and participating in that, I think, is really cool. So those are just some opportunities to get some hands-on experience with them. And so that is that slide, and I'm going to move on because we have lots of opportunities listed in our resources page that we give you. And someone mentioned I did Applied Instructional Design Academy, and it was amazing, from Heather. Also, we had a question, Laura, and that goes into our thank you and any questions. Someone asked our opinion about going from education. Would you, and I'm going to put this to the group because why not? Would you move from education straight into consulting, or would you go to corporate? If you were coming from education, would you recommend someone to go into consulting or to corporate?
I am afraid of consulting. I don't know that I know how to do it properly. So I would love to go straight into consulting. That's what I would prefer to do. But I feel like I feel, imposter syndrome comes in. But I do know teachers who've gone straight to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would lean towards consulting before corporate. And I think the imposter syndrome is heavier in corporate because there's so much of a bigger audience in corporate, and so many opinions and feedback. And I mean, no one's afraid to say anything in corporate. And I don't know. I'm so much more like, I don't know, polite and just so, I don't know, coming from education. And I'm just like, ooh, no one's afraid to speak out here, are they? And so with consulting, I feel like there's more one-on-one. It's a smaller situation. It's more personal. There's that relationship piece. You can take your time in building that relationship when consulting. So that just seems like more of a safer space. But that's a personal thing. So I guess it depends on you and your personality, in my opinion. So anyway, that was a question from the Q&A. All right, so that leads to our next slide, which goes to feedback. We want your feedback. Give it to us. So here's a QR and your Bitly. It's the same feedback form that you've probably seen in other sessions.
It's also in the chat.
It's in the chat. There you go.
And then the resource page.
And then the last one is resources. Okay.
Yay.
And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for spending time with us.
We appreciate it.
And I do believe we've got something coming up now soon. Right. So we're going to end the session, I think.
We do. Wonderfully done, both of you. Huge kudos. You guys are both testimonies to those aspects of how can you live and learn and grow through each of those different changes of culture shock is really that opportunity of it's wobbling. We're going to figure out how we deal with this wobble. So beautifully done. Wonderful resources. And I'm so glad you're part of our community.
Thank you.
So, all righty. Well, everybody, now we are going into a closing session before we're going to end the day out, as promised, with a couple of roundtable talks at each of the tables about sometimes some of the farces or some of the untruths that might need to be challenged when we're talking about career resilience with me and Marie. Wonderful. All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.